Now people get to listen to you for hours a week.
Yeah,
and I'm
and
sure some people listen to every
second.
Rick Howe show.
Every Rick Howe show. And then they can listen to us on Saturday and then again on Sunday. So it's Todd Veinotte on News 95.7, 7 days a week.
Oh, you know what? What a great place to be, really.
What a great place to be. Anyway, welcome back. And we're chatting about, we want to talk about the Canadian dream. And this is one of your catchphrases that you use.
I think it speaks to me, and I think hopefully it speaks to the people who are listening to our show.
Yeah.
Buying
homeownership.
Homeownership is part of the Canadian dream.
Yeah.
I think, when you're growing up and in the media, they talk about the American dream a lot. Like, who says the Canadian dream? Like, nobody says that.
Yeah.
And that American dream was really, that new Ford, Chevy, Chrysler vehicle in the yard with your white picket fence, living in your suburban neighborhood and keeping up with the Joneses. You know what? That's what the American dream was. And, I think probably the Canadian dream is similar, but I think that in some ways the Canadian dream is maybe hopefully more stable and hopefully still attainable for many, many Canadians. And I know in Halifax, typically it has been. And like over the last so many months, it has been more challenging with the price increases and, more demand in the marketplace. But you know what? I think it's still very achievable for many.
Yeah.
And, I'm happy to be a part of the process because that makes me feel good,
Yeah, but I mean, to that, the American dream was accessible to somebody if they were in the right position to enjoy it. For many, they were left out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is becoming an issue here in this country when it comes to the Canadian dream of home ownership.
It is.
There are many people who just 2 years ago could have been part of that dream who no longer can be, to no fault of their own. They've done everything that they've been expected to do, but the sands have shifted underneath
and based
their feet.
on maybe the year that they were born,
right? Exactly.
That's going to be more and more challenging.
Right.
And things are going to right the ship. You know what I mean? Incomes are going to increase. Things are going to come back in line.
When's that going to happen?
I think everything takes time. And, at one time, the percentage of a person's income, went to their home. Now it's about the same percentage. Incomes have increased over the years. And right now, yes, we are seeing a spike in the home prices. But if we think about Ontario and let's talk about Toronto, you need to have household income of over $200,000 really to afford anything.
Yes.
And is their average income that much higher than it is here?
No way.
No, it's not.
No.
So it's not it's available to even less people there.
Right.
Where here it's still realistic, and I think we're going to see some urban sprawl.
Yeah, but I want to push back a little bit here, if you would allow me.
You know what? I love a little devil's advocate.
That's right, little devil's advocate here. Okay, a lot of people right now in Nova Scotia, our listening audience, makes $50,000-$60,000. I would bet a lot of people that's probably I think the median income in this province is something like $40,000 to $50,000. But let's say you're even making $70,000. You are now out of the housing market if you're a single household income person making, which $70,000 ain't that bad of money, right? You need to have a pretty good job to be pulling in $70,000.
Yeah.
A lot of civil servants would be making that. A lot of military would be in that range.
Mm-hmm.
Those people cannot afford to get a down payment together and qualify for, because the average average house now is $400,000 or something like that here, right? So I'm seeing, just based on that, this is becoming a problem, is it not?
You know what? I think that it really is the higher income earners that can afford to buy a home on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not for everyone. And I think more and more there's 2 applicants buying a home. There's 2 applicants on the mortgage. Or there's a large gift from mother, father, brother, sister. I'm seeing a lot of gifted down payments, and I'm seeing gifted down payments to the tune of large sums of money.
Yeah.
Todd, I'm seeing gifts in excess of $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. And that is a recipe of a shift in the culture. When I started doing this 15 years ago, gifts made up a very small percentage of the down payment, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, and I saw a stat the other day, like 2% of down payments were gifted.
Yeah.
Now it is staggering. Every transaction I see for a first-time home buyer has a family gift, or there's two applicants, and a gift from the family.
Right.
And the culture is changing.
That's a problem, isn't it?
But I'll tell you,
This Canadian dream. Yeah.
my parents, everyone's parents, if they owned a home, have benefited from these increasing property values.
Yeah.
So guess what? The net worth of that family has now increased.
Yeah.
And they're either sharing a part of that net worth in terms of maybe an early inheritance or a gift. There are some parents that are mortgaging their own homes to give gifts to their kids to get into this housing market. It's happening. And we're going to see that more and more over time. And, you know, at one time, there was multi-generational housing situation. I can tell you, first-time home buyers today, they are not letting their parents move into their house.
Yeah. That's right.
That's not happening.
No.
There's been a shift, and that shift is going to continue happening. But I'm going to say we're going to see more and more gifted down payments, especially for first-time home buyers. And I think we're going to see a lot of first-time home buyers only buying a home if there's two applicants.
But here's, again, it's back to the problem. Somebody, a young person doesn't have that opportunity. Perhaps they're from a single income parent who didn't make a lot of money, scrape together, student loans, university, do everything right, and they're to no fault of their own unable to achieve that Canadian dream. This is becoming a problem, in my opinion.
And it is going to continue happening. I think that single person without the down payment, with that single, income, it is going to take them years to get into the housing market. I read a stat the other day that the average household in Ontario without help from their family would take 30 years to save enough money for the down payment to be able to qualify based on their average income. Yeah. It is not that bad here, but it is worse than it was a year ago, and it's worse than it was 2 years ago. Yeah. Will it continue getting worse, Todd? I don't know, because I'm not an economist. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen with the housing prices and the supply. But the one thing I do know in basic economics is it's supply and demand. Currently, there is more demand than there is supply. And unless, we get more, homes being built, or we slow the people moving into Nova Scotia, the supply issue is going to continue. But there's nowhere I'd rather live than in Halifax, and there's nowhere I'd rather live than in Nova Scotia.
Okay. I want to talk in the next segment about affordable housing. This is a hot button issue, and how the private sector is involved in mortgage lending and all of that. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, that's Clinton Wilkins, myself, Todd Veinotte. This is Mortgage 101, your guide to home ownership, right here on News 95.7. As mentioned, when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about housing supply and affordability. We'll get to that when we come back.